Now, I want to recap on what we have said before about who we are. We are acquiring knowledge of ourselves, self-knowledge. And to do that, we must observe ourselves. We must read about the anatomy of the mind and of ourselves, the physical machine, and the human machine that we were created as. So who is to learn? It is the manager who is in charge of this unit, this human machine. So the manager has to learn about his body to some degree and the organs. Then he must acquire information about his nervous system consisting of the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves that go forth from the spinal cord to every single cell in the body. Then comes the mind, and this is the section which is invisible and it's hardly spoken of in this world today. So the manager has to learn, but where can he learn this? There are so many books written today, and we are very fortunate that in this time we have tons of books written by authors on the mind. As well, the Bible tells us a lot about the mind. And as we go on in these so-called expositions, I will highlight to you the areas you can find the mind was mentioned. Now, when the manager becomes aware of his mind, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the divine mind, and the ego mind, the higher self, and the false self, he has a fairly good, wide, comprehensive knowledge of himself. And so doing, he could now observe the operations of himself, whether he is in good standing or not. And also he can use this knowledge to manifest for himself all the things that he wants in this life to produce what is called the abundant life here, and later on life everlasting. So we have to acquire self-knowledge, and when we do and practice it and put it to work, we are going to acquire self-awareness. And the more self-awareness we can acquire, the better we become at using this physical vehicle to produce for ourselves what? A better life, better situations in life, better relationships we have in life, and all the good things that we want. So life is really in the hands of the manager to actually learn about the machine. It's just like a car. The better you know the car, the better mechanic you have become, the better you will be able to use the car and keep the car in a very good working condition. So this should be the aim of mankind, every single human being on the face of the earth. But at the same time, there is another world that exists there that is very carnal. And if you notice, there are lots and lots of distractions that are created by the very same mind of men. They have created all these possessions and physical things that man would love to have. And we see that now in the cell phone industry, the computer industry, the iPad, the MP3 industry, car industry, house, land, money, jewelry, and so the focus is really on these physical possessions. And so we are more outwardly focused and not inwardly focused on the mind. And because everything that man creates in the physical world came out of the mind of somebody as a thought. And then he proceeded to manifest it in the form of a physical item. Now thoughts then become things. So this is recapping about who we are and how we operate. Now when you study mechanics or you study in medicine, you have to start with the anatomy of the topic. And it's the same thing with the mind. You start with the anatomy of yourself, the anatomy of your mind, and then you do the physiology, which is the working of the parts. So the same principle must be adopted if you really need to know yourself. The problem is that man does not know himself enough. He has some knowledge and he has some intuition, inner knowledge, which he didn't acquire from reading or studying or seeking. So man now must embark upon learning about himself. Now, if we are to have a better generation to come, we need to teach this in the schools. We need to tell and teach the young children coming up in the schools about themselves so that they would understand better how to use the parts that they were given that form the human machine. Now, we are already using these parts unknowingly, and this is why man is exploding in negativity, violence, crime, and robbery. So, if we want to stop this, it lies within education of the children to come, because the children will be the men and women of tomorrow. They will form the government. They will become the doctors and lawyers and engineers and politicians of tomorrow. And so it is. Life is like a relay race. We pass on the buck from one generation to another. It's like a production line. The first set reaches and drops off, and the second set comes, and then the third set comes, and the fourth set comes from generation to generation. And it's a line, a production line, and the children of today must be taught this in school. But then you say, who's going to teach it? Well, somebody will have to teach teachers, and these teachers must become aware and have the desire to learn first about themselves and then become good at the subject before they start teaching it. So it is the solution, but we have to get people who are in power, the politicians, the government, to desire and to become aware of themselves as well, and then they will implement this procedure in the schools. As it is, if you look at it, you'll see that we are teaching children lots of negative things via the media, the internet, and books. And they learn by example. As a matter of fact, example is one of the best ways of teaching children. And they grow up in the dominant atmosphere of the home. So if the home is negative, they will grow up in a negative environment. If it's positive, they will grow up in a positive environment. So in actual fact, the solution to all our problems in this world today is to know ourselves. Cut.